Hey guys, DC Network here, coming at you with Ask DC Network number 14. Our first question today comes from Anonymous YT, who asks, why are they canceling so many shows? And this is in reference to the Warner Brothers Discovery Purge, as many people have dubbed it, where they removed 36 shows from HBO Max and also have canceled a lot of series since then. And the reason why, quite frankly, is simple. It's because a merger happened. You know, whenever a merger happens, things like this occur. Shows are canceled that are currently on the air that people are enjoying. Shows that are in development are just never going to come out for no reason because of, the quality of the series, just because the executives who are currently in place don't have the same vision as the executives who departed the company. So for example, Tom Asheen and Michael Oline, they don't have the same vision for Cartoon Network. Tom Asheen had his vision with Cartoonito being a part of it, with the Redraw Your World era and all that jazz, and Michael Oline has a different vision where he kind of rebranded the channel, so to speak, and we have all these new bumpers and whatnot, and we don't know exactly where it's going to go from a show perspective on what's going to be greenlit for the channel, but different executives have different visions, and pretty much that's what's happening with Warner Brothers Discovery as a whole right now. On top of that, a factor that is playing into this particular situation is the fact that they're $55 billion in debt. They're trying to find ways to kind of lessen their debt and to try to, not lose more money. So that's going to include them canceling some series that are in development to use them as tax write-offs so they get, all that money they spent working on those series back to the company. PBB asks, if you were to create a show, what channel would it be on, what would it be about, and what creators of your favorite shows would you hire to help out? So what channel would I want it to be on? And this is a loaded question, because in the past I would have said Cartoon Network, but given the fact that they really don't air their current series and don't advertise for them and everything that's going on with Warner Brothers Discovery, I would not want to have a show on Cartoon Network. The next two channels that come to mind are Nickelodeon and Disney, and in all honesty, I wouldn't want to have a show on Nickelodeon just because they don't know when to end a show. What I mean by this is if you look at the Fairly Odd Parents, that went on for like 10 years. It overstayed its welcome, and the same thing is happening now with SpongeBob. It's been on for like 20 years now, if not more than that. I feel like Nick kind of tries to milk everything they can out of their properties instead of letting the creators end the show when they want to. So with that being said, I would go with Disney, honestly, because if we look at a show like Gravity Falls, that series, in my opinion, should have gone on for more than 2 seasons, but it didn't because the creator, Alex Hirsch, wanted to end it at season 2, and Disney was like, okay, you want to end it the way you want to end it. They were respectful of his wishes, which is why I feel like I would rather be at Disney than Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. What would my show be about? I actually came up with a show idea in a movie making class I took long ago, and essentially it would be somewhat similar to regular show, following some characters as they kind of just live out their lives. That's all I'll tease there. And what few creators would you want to hire to help out? I don't know, I probably would choose maybe like JG Quintel, or probably I would lean towards him because it would be inspired by regular show, so why not get the creator of regular show to help out? Unmax Clasher asks, Cartoon Network is restarting the original Teen Titans next week, so my question is this a recap before season 6? I've thought this in the past. I've actually made videos in the past saying, well, Teen Titans is on, they're airing seasons 1 through 5, so is this a hint that season 6 is coming? And in all honesty, in the past I would have said yes, this is a hint towards season 6. They're trying to gauge interest, but they've done it so many times now that I really don't know what it is. Like, I don't understand how, they can air whatever show they want, right? They can air whatever reruns they want of older series, but I don't understand how they constantly go back to this one series. Like, I remember for a period of time, Teen Titans, the original, and Ben 10, also the original series, they were airing a lot of reruns of those shows, and I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. So they're airing Teen Titans, the original series, and Ben 10, the original series. I wonder what this means. I wonder if this is going to lead into a new original continuity Ben 10 series in a season 6 for Teen Titans, and it ended up meaning nothing. They've aired Teen Titans so many times now. In the past, I thought, oh wow, this might be hinting towards season 6. Maybe they're trying to gauge interest in a potential season 6, or try to familiarize this generation of kids with the original Teen Titans. But honestly, I don't know. It's been on so many times, I feel like it has nothing to do with season 6. But again, that begs the question, why do you keep going back to this one series when you have an entire live library of content? Short answer, I don't think it has anything to do with season 6, unfortunately, but I am curious as to why they keep going back to this one series, and I won't rule out that one day we do get season 6, but I'm not going to sit here and say that this is definitely going to lead into that. Sadish asks, do you think we might see Ben 10 return to Cartoon Network and other action shows in the year 2022? So this year, no, I think we're done with new show premieres for this year, which begs the question, where is Unicorn Warriors Eternal and when is that series going to premiere? But that's a story for another day. But regarding your question, I am genuinely curious what is going on with Ben 10, because we were supposed to get an announcement according to Duncan Rolu last December, and we're almost in December of 2022, a whole year later, and we still haven't heard anything about it, which makes me wonder, has this series been canceled? Is it being reworked? What exactly is happening behind the scenes? And obviously we don't know, it's all speculation. And regarding other action shows premiering on the channel, who knows? I mean, that's something I'm wondering as well, because we had Batman Cape Crusader, which looked like it was going to be a more darker, serious tone series, but that's now being sold off to other networks. I guess, is Unicorn Warriors Eternal going to be an action show? We really don't know for certain what themes that show is going to have, although it does look like it's going to be darker with a more serious tone to it and probably some action elements as well, but we haven't had a first look at that series. We haven't gotten to see what it's like. So as to, do I think shows are premiering this year in the year 2022? No, we're not getting anything else this year. I'd be shocked if we get Unicorn Warriors Eternal this year. As for next year, who knows? I mean, in all honesty, we might see a similar situation for at least the first half of the year where nothing's really premiering, but I'm hoping as we get to the latter half of 2023, we're going to start to see some of these new Cartoon Network shows come to the channel, because if not, then this network is in a lot of trouble because they can't survive on 3 shows. I don't care how popular Teen Titans Go is with this generation's kids, and you know, same thing with Craigie the Creek and We Baby Bears. I don't care how popular or not popular those series are, you can't survive on 3 shows no matter what company you are. Patrick Dag asks, yo DC Network, how do you think Cartoon Network and Boomerang would have been if the Fox and Time Warner merger had gone through back in 2014? It would have been interesting because if the Fox Time Warner merger had gone through, Time Warner would currently be owned by Disney, because as we all know, Fox was bought out by Disney, and so Disney now owns shows like The Simpsons, so that would have meant that Cartoon Network would be a property of Disney, meaning that all of Cartoon Network's IPs, including Ben 10, Regular Show, Adventure Time, and I could go on and on and on, all those shows would be owned by Disney. Not only that, actually, DC would be owned by Disney, so Disney would pretty much have a monopoly on the superhero genre, given that they would have then owned Marvel and would have owned DC. I think things would have been drastically different for Cartoon Network and Boomerang, given that they would be owned by Disney. Then I think they would have been receiving a lot more financial resources than they have been over the past few years, in the sense of, I think we would have been seeing more shows on the channel as opposed to, you know, the 3 we have right now and the few others that we had, you know, in past years that have since been canceled. I think they would have had, at least for Cartoon Network's side of things, who knows about Boomerang, but for Cartoon Network, I think there would have been a lot more financial fortitude put into it. I think we would have seen a lot more shows come out of it. As for the quality of those shows, that would be a question that Disney, I would say, for the most part, except for Star Wars, I would say when they've acquired different properties, they've been pretty good with the quality of the shows, like maintaining that same quality. Like I said, the only time I would argue they haven't done a good job with that is Star Wars. So I feel like hopefully they would have kind of let Cartoon Network do their own thing and keep that same level of quality that we've been used to seeing. Although I would say as of late, I would say Cartoon Network's quality has gone down a bit when it comes to some of the shows they've been premiering, or at least I don't want to say, because they've been premiering good shows, but the problem is that they haven't been having that quantity of shows on the air, and at the same time, a lot of their shows have been canceled early on due to, you know, not getting enough people interested in the series. And you could argue that's not the show's fault, it's partially the network's fault for not advertising, but I feel like Disney would have probably solved all of that, because they wouldn't just kind of throw Cartoon Network to the side and pretend it doesn't exist half the time like Warner Media did. did. I feel like they'd actually put care and effort into the channel, and things would have been different. It would have been drastically different, and I would have been very interested to see what Disney's Cartoon Network and Disney's Boomerang would look like. This is, of course, assuming that if Fox did indeed own Time Warner, that Disney would have still purchased it. We don't know. The whole situation could have been different, and Fox would have maybe never been sold off to Disney. So, all in all, I think things would have been drastically different. I know you asked, do I think Christina Miller would have still been president? Who knows? I just think the whole company in general would have been drastically different. It wouldn't be owned by AT&T ever. It would not have been owned by now Warner Brothers Discovery, so Discovery. It would have been owned by Fox and then potentially Disney. So yeah, Cartoon Network and Boomerang, I think things would have looked very different and for the better. I think it would have been a good thing. Sad Lobster 1 asked 6 questions, which I can't get to all of these, but I wanted to address your 5th question. Why do companies always rely on focus groups and demographics for success when they should understand that animation appeals to every age group out there? I think this is a really interesting question on multiple levels, because first and foremost, I want to talk about how there is a stigma when it comes to animation. Many people think that animation only appeals to kids. I mean, we could look at Bob Chapek over at Disney a few months ago, said that when parents put their kids to sleep, they're not going to put on more cartoons, they're going to watch something in live action. I feel like that's inherently wrong. Like, look, the other night at like 10 o'clock at night, I was watching My Hero Academia, and I'm not a kid. I like animation, I like My Hero Academia, and yeah, I was watching it. So I feel like just that whole stigma where animation's only for kids, it's stupid, it's wrong. The problem is that these companies, a lot of time, as you said, they always focus animation on that 6 to 11 age demographic. They always focus on that same age demographic, and then when adults don't watch those series, they're like, oh, adults just don't like animation. No, we like animation. It's just that you guys don't make animation that attract older audiences anymore. Like, look, I feel like the perfect mix of this was honestly the early 2010s. If you look at Cartoon Network, they had Adventure Time, regular show, Steven Universe as well. I would argue I really enjoyed The Amazing World of Gumball, even though I'm not in that age demographic, but particularly, let's focus on regular show Steven Universe and Adventure Time. Those shows had a lot of mature themes in them. Same thing actually, even you look at Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated at the time and the Looney Tunes show, those shows were targeting that 6 to 11 age demographic, but they were also drawing in much older audiences as well. I knew people in their 50s and 60s that loved watching the Looney Tunes show. And it's not being targeted towards them, but they enjoyed watching it. Why? Because it was something that's being made for everybody. It had content in it that attracted 6-year-olds, it attracted 50-year-olds, and it could even attract like 80-year-olds or 90-year-olds. Like, it attracted everybody. And so the problem is nowadays is I feel like these networks aren't doing that anymore. Instead of coming up with quality content that has deeper layers to it to attract older audiences, they're going with the more so Teen Titans Go style of things, where it's comedy oriented and it's more so this quick comedy that a kid will find funny, but as soon as you hit a certain age, you're gonna think it's stupid. I feel like I said, the early 2010s was a great time for this, for Cartoon Network, but not only them. I mean, if you look at Disney, they had Gravity Falls on. That was a series that definitely attracted older audiences, and I feel like nowadays we don't see that as much, especially on the Cartoon Network side of things. You can't, cast too wide of a net and say we're trying to attract everybody with this series, because then you may end up attracting no one. But what you can do is target a specific demographic, but then have deeper themes in them and deeper storylines that will also attract older audiences. There's a way that can be done, and it has been done in the past, but for whatever reason, Cartoon Network and the animation industry as a whole has kind of shied away from that lately, and I really hope we go back to that. I will say there has been a bit of a, I don't want to say resurgence, but a bit of a surge in adult animation after Rick and Morty happened. Like, more companies are like, oh, maybe we should take a look at the adult demographic, but I feel like that leans very heavily into mature themes. I feel like they're missing out on the whole teen and young adult demographic when it comes to the animation industry. It's like once you hit the age of like 12 or 13, they kind of forget about you until you're an adult. And I feel like they need to, just animation companies in general, go back to the time where in the early 2010s we had regular show Adventure Time, where I feel like those shows probably had a predominant teenage and young adult audience, where you look at current shows and they don't have that because they're not having any aspects of those shows, or rather no elements of those series that are attracting those audiences. And I really hope the animation industry as a whole gets back to that. Animation's not only for little kids, like adults, teenagers, even grandparents, parents, they like it too. Kareem asks, do you think the Total Drama Revival has the potential to be one of the best shows on Cartoon Network once it comes out? In all honesty, yes, I do think it has that potential. If they handle this series right, I feel like it could be the beginning of a resurgence to Cartoon Network. Like everything I just talked about in the last question, how they don't have shows anymore that are targeting a younger demographic while also having elements in there that will attract older audiences as well. If they handle this Total Drama Revival properly, this is a show that will have those elements. This is one of those series back in the mid 2000s to early 2010s that had elements in it that would attract older audiences despite targeting, a younger demographic or a 6 to 11-year-old demographic. Like if this new Total Drama series comes out and it's actually really good and it's true to the original and all that, and it has these more serious undertones to it and more layers to it than just, Total Drama Rama, let's say, for example, which I think it will. It's going to not only attract the, targeted demographic, which is probably going to be ages 6 to 11, but it will also attract older audiences as well. It will attract people who grew up on the original Total Drama Island and the following sequel series as well. It's going to attract such a wide group of people, a wide audience of people, that I really do think if they handle this show properly, because not only does the show have to be good, the network has to air it. They have to advertise it. When they air this show, I really hope they don't burn it out in 2 weeks, because that's going to do nothing for the channel. This show is a show that I feel like is suited for a weekly release perfectly. Have this air over 26 weeks. We have 26 weeks of Total Drama. When it's airing, have reruns on the channel as well. And when the first season ends, because we know this got greenlit for 2 seasons, once the first season ends, don't have it disappear. Have it stick around for reruns and keep rerunning the show to build an audience, because I feel like if they do that, along with this show being good, it's going to attract so many different people, like different ages of people, onto Cartoon Network again. But the problem is they don't have other shows to keep those people around. So like if you're, let's say, someone who's, I don't know, in high school, or if you're in college and you're like, oh wow, that's a more serious cartoon on Cartoon Network, I want to check that out. You check it out, you like it, you watch it for 26 weeks, but then there's nothing else with those serious elements and more darker tones to it, then you're going to watch that show for the 26 weeks it's on, and then probably leave the channel until season 2 comes out. They need to have this show come out and also have some other shows that will attract those audiences as well, which I don't think that's going to happen unless all of a sudden we have, Unicorn Wars Eternal is out and that has more serious tones to it, and then let's say Batman Caped Crusader actually does come out on Cartoon Network, which in all likelihood it's not going to, given that it's being shopped around. But I do think that the Total Drama Revival, number one, if it's actually really good, and number two, if they actually handle it well from an advertising and marketing perspective and from, scheduling as well, having it air reruns on the channel, I think it has the potential to start a resurgence for Cartoon Network and get people of all ages back on the channel again. And I really hope it does, because Cartoon Network back in the early 2010s, I've said this before, it's the most memorable era of Cartoon Network to me. I just remember enjoying that era of Cartoon Network so much because it had such a wide variety of series on the channel, and I hope we get back to that one day. And I do think Total Drama Island's revival could be the start of that. John Johnson Jr. asks, in one of your videos you talked about the possibility of Comcast buying Warner Brothers Discovery. If that happens, would that mean that Cartoon Network would now be partners of DreamWorks, Illumination, and Universal Studios, since these companies are also owned by Comcast? If Comcast bought Warner Brothers Discovery, I think that Cartoon Network as a whole would instantly have a lot more content to put on the channel, potentially. And I say potentially because you do go on to say we could have a Shrek series, Despicable Me series, and maybe another How to Train Your Dragon series. And I do think if Comcast does indeed buy Warner Brothers Discovery, those things will happen. I can almost guarantee we'll have some sort of Minions series on Cartoon Network, and probably, whatever other properties, if they want to go Kung Fu Panda again, or How to Train Your Dragon, whatever. I think that they'll definitely at least have those movies there on the channel, and probably have some spin-off series as well. I feel like overall it could potentially be a good thing for Cartoon Network. The biggest problem, in my opinion, with Cartoon Network right now, or one of the bigger problems, is they don't have enough variety on the channel. These properties that are under the Comcast brand, a part of DreamWorks, Universal, and Illumination, they'll just add more variety to the channel, because I'm sure they would produce series for these shows. I'm sure Minions is huge. There's been a lot of Despicable Me movies. I'm sure they would love to do a Minions series I don't believe they have already. I could be wrong on that, though. There would be a lot of possibilities for Cartoon Network. I think they'd have a lot more variety on the channel, and all in all, it might be a good thing, because hey, things are pretty bad right now with Warner Brothers Discovery, so Comcast buying them out might actually not be a bad thing. Fire Types Forever asks, do you believe that Warner Brothers Discovery will shut down Cartoon Network, the channel itself? I don't think they're going to shut it down anytime soon. I do think, though, if Cartoon Network doesn't get its act together, and by that I mean they really need to start producing more series. Like, I know they've announced a lot of things and it takes time to develop these series, but they need something on the channel. I mean, you can't survive. I've said this so many times lately, but you cannot survive with Teen Titans Go, We Baby Bears, and Craig of the Creek, and that's it. You need more than that. I don't think in the immediate future Cartoon Network is going to get shut down, but I do think within the next 5 to 10 years or so, if things don't get better, I would not be at all shocked to see that Cartoon Network is no longer a TV channel. I don't think the brand itself will go away. They could probably just keep it as a studio for, some content they put on HBO Max or whatever the streaming service is at that time. But I could definitely see the channel itself disappearing if things don't get better. Like, there is the possibility that, hey, in like 3 years, Cartoon Network looks drastically different, and it's like, yeah, we're back to like the early 2010s or late 2000s where there's a wide variety of content on the channel. It's going to take a lot of work to get there. I don't know if we're going to be there in 3 years' time, but I'm hoping next year we start to see that, because they need to start premiering some of these shows they announced. Like, where is Unicorn Wars Eternal? Like, I really don't know what's going on with that series, because it was supposed to come out in 21, then got delayed to 2022 this year, and we're at the end of the year, and where is it? We don't know. We have no confirmation on when it's coming, if it's coming, which I'd assume it is still coming, because they did do a little preview event, I believe, at New York Comic Con. There's no confirmation on when that show is coming, so I do think that, yes, if things don't get better, Cartoon Network could get shut down in the future, but I don't think it's the immediate future. I think that's like 5 to 10 years from now, if things don't get better, which fingers crossed they do, because I don't want to see Cartoon Network go away. I like, going on that channel from time to time, watching some cartoons, and hopefully things get better, but we'll have to wait and see. Sean asks, what do you think of Acme Night? I really like Acme Night, and the reason I say this, I don't watch it a ton, but the reason I say this is because back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, Cartoon Network had Movie Night. I believe it was Flicks at one point, it was called something like that, but they had their Movie Night on Sunday nights. Every Sunday they would air a movie on the channel, and I really enjoyed watching that. I really enjoyed tuning into the movies they had on the channel at the time, and for years during the mid to late 2010s and, obviously the early 2020s, when they had no movie channel, or rather movie night, I always was saying, like, I don't understand why they got rid of their movie block. They had movies every Sunday. I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was a good thing for the channel, and I thought they should go back to that. So when they announced Acme Night, I was happy to hear that, because I'm like, good, they're finally adding back a movie night to Cartoon Network. As for the selection of movies they've had on Acme Night, I've watched some of them. I've enjoyed watching some of them. Like, I know last year they had Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, the original one with Tobey Maguire, on the channel. There's other movies they've had on the channel, like I think it was 17 again, and then they had Crazy Rich Asians, I think, and those were questionable choices to me. So I'm not saying that every movie they've had on the channel during Acme Night's run has been a good choice, but I'm glad that Acme Night, or rather a movie night in general, exists. I think that is something that should be a mainstay on the channel. And our last question for today comes from Cartoon Gal, who asks, do you think other classic Cartoon Network shows are going to get DVD box sets eventually? I am glad we got the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Ed and Eddie box set. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that first. But what's curious to me is I don't get how they arbitrarily picked those two series. Like, I, for example, love Ed and Eddie. I love Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I'm very happy with those box sets. But if you're someone who doesn't like those two series, then what about something like, say, the Powerpuff Girls? Re-release that box set or make a new one for the Powerpuff Girls. Or a regular show box set finally. I feel like they should have had more than just the two they've released, because it's the 30th anniversary of Cartoon Network. They should be celebrating all of their series, not just two of them, which I'm not saying release every Cartoon Network series as a DVD box set, because that's not feasible, but release some more. At least release like 5 or 6 as opposed to 2. Of course, there could be more coming, but there's no confirmation of that. And to answer your question, do I think we're going to get more? Certainly hope so, but I don't know if they will, because I feel like it's such a Cartoon Network thing to just leave it here and not do any more besides that. But at the same time, I really hope they do make more, and it would be nice to hear, because in all honesty, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be nice to hear Cartoon Network come out and say that there are more coming, because I don't even remember seeing any sort of announcement from Cartoon Network that they were making these box sets. I found out about them from you guys in the comment section saying check Amazon, they're on Amazon, but I never saw a commercial, a clip, a tweet, anything saying, hey, we're releasing Foster Home for Imaginary Friends and Ed and Eddie as complete series box sets. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, please tell me in the comment section below. But it'd be nice to have them come out and say, hey, yeah, we know you enjoy these box sets, we're gonna make more, or hey, we have Codename Kids Next Door and Chowder, we have box sets coming within the next like 3 or 4 months or whatever, something like that. It'd be nice to hear that from Cartoon Network. Do I think they're going to do that? No. Do I think they're going to release more box sets? I certainly hope so, but I'm not going to bet on it. Anyways, that's it for Ask DC Network number 14. There were a ton of great questions. I couldn't get to all of them, obviously. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Ask DC Networks in the future and other videos on this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.